Good afternoon, family. How are we? We good? Okay. I'm good too. I'm honored to be here. This is my family, and the Nan family is my family. And so with that, it's really great to be back in the people's house. This is the house that the Reverend Al Sharpton built. I first met Dr. Lenora Fulani here in this house. It is not only the birthplace of the criminal justice reform, continued work on the Voting Rights Act, police accountability, and thank you for that earlier today, youth leadership, but most importantly, it is the birthplace of the mantra, no justice, no peace. So I'm really honored to have been asked by the NAN Disabilities Committee to be a part of this collaborative trauma summit. And I really want to draw the lens back a little bit because I'm not here to talk about individual trauma. I'm here to talk about community trauma because that's important to the conversation as we look at what's happening in Harlem. So it could only have been God who turned my trauma into a testimony. And so how could I refuse when God asked me to stand up and to be here and to talk about it? So you're probably wondering, who's this woman? We really thought we were gonna have a more dynamic speaker. You got me, and I am Dr. Felicia Pullen. Chaplain Jones spoke a little bit about some of the titles that I have. I'm president and CEO of Let's Talk Safety, Inc. That includes Safe in Harlem, which is a teen-led coalition, so every young person in this community is my boss. It also includes The Pillars, which is holistic health and wellness for people like me in active use, but also for people who are loving somebody in active use, because this is a family issue, it is a community issue, and so I try and bring community solutions to this problem. But among all of those really important sounding jobs that I have, the thing that I am most proud to say is that I am Harlem born and I am Harlem raised. So my intersectionality also includes that I'm a mom to two amazing, funny, and talented young people, Kai and Cameron. They'll probably be hiding right now as I call their names, but that's okay, that's what moms do. But I'm also a daughter to many in this community and a mother to some whom I did not birth. I'm a supportive friend to a lot of women that I get a chance to laugh and to cry with. Professionally, I'm a social worker, I'm a harm reductionist, I'm a prevention specialist, but most of all, I'm an employee of yours. And so it's the teens, it is you, it is the youth leaders in Harlem. I'm a qualitative researcher. Those are the things that I really hold on to, not the titles of president and CEO. They don't mean a damn. It is my work for you that I am most proud. So, I am your follower. You are my leader. You, the residents of Harlem, advise me and tell me what to do. And so it's really the impact of structural racism that I want to speak about today. I'm your conduit when you're not at tables that I get a chance to sit and speak. I am the one that you can come to tell me what it is that you want me to say to those that have the power to create change. But I don't do this work alone. It is here the chaplains, the clergy, the parents, the teens, the committee members, the police officers, the elected officials that you put into power that help me to do the work that I do. And so, When I was asked by Chaplain Naomi Jones to speak here today about the impact of community trauma, it was so easy for me to stand up and say yes. Because this topic is really super important to me. It's the basis of my research, and it's the flame that lights my fire that keeps me going and doing what I do. I commend you for being here, for giving me 3 hours. I have 3 hours to make this speech. No. For giving me 30 minutes of your time so that we can talk about what's happening in this community. And I'm also going to come up with a couple of solutions to offer as we begin to move forward to heal the trauma in this community. So I hope that we all leave here with a little bit more fire in our bellies to do better and to be better and to fight harder as we address community trauma in Harlem. So my goals are twofold. I want to educate you about some of the data that is happening that people up high are looking down on in this community. But I also want us to talk about how we can come together to address our own issues as well, because we cannot just put the power into the hands of someone else. We have the power. So when I set about this discussion, I began to do a little bit of research, and I was really super intentional about drawing a direct connection between the words community and trauma. And I began to look at the Latin root of the word community, and I came up with co and com. And you're not going to be surprised that really what that meant was together. Yes. So together and with. How do we come together and with as we look at the word community? And so I was really intense about this, and I realized that you have to be willing to come together and to be with. You have to be willing to commune together and to be with. And so I'm just going to put this question out there. Are we willing to come together and to be with one another to address this trauma? I'm glad to hear you give me some feedback, because that was not a rhetorical question. But then as I began to look at the word trauma, and we heard an earlier definition, it means a disordered psychological or behavioral state resulting from severe mental or emotional stress. And then all of a sudden it hit me. It hit me that I was looking at two words that were so dichotomous, that were so different, because one was a willingness to come together, and the other, in trauma, there's no willingness to be in trauma. So how was I going to connect these two words and make them make sense, and to also be able to bring some hope to this discussion? I am not willing to sit in community trauma. So I became really profoundly sad, and then I had to get outside of myself and look at these two diabolically opposed words. But they were so intertwined because they impact us every day. So together I realized that we had to be willing to heal the wounds that were inflicted upon us. I'm going to say that one more time. The wounds that were inflicted upon us, this is not of our own doing and our own making, to heal the psychological and emotional stress. We have to be willing. I'm not asking you to do anything more right now than to be willing. They say that the community-based trauma that we are experiencing is unintentional marginalization, unintentional oppression. But we know better, don't we, Nan family? We know all too well the intent of structural racism that is contributing to community trauma. We need to call them what they are. They are political determinants of health. They are imposed upon us by those we have put in power to protect us. Let's call it what it is. So really, we have to be willing to be fearless in this fight back for equity. There's a need for equity that is a result of community trauma. It's not a secret, and I'm gonna tell you why I know that this is not a secret and it's not unintentional. In October of 2021, the New York City Board of Health declared, the New York City Board of Health declared, the service and care received by Black New Yorkers reflected long-standing structural racism which impacted their health and well-being, thus defining it as a public health crisis. That is what your government has told. They're telling you that they know. I love this Q&A. So this means that there's an acute awareness of the intersection of poverty, race, geography, and political determinants of health. And it's been determined to be a byproduct of structural racism that has been levied upon our people, allowed by our government. They're immersed in the data and they're immersed in the numbers, but we are immersed in the reality of what's happening on the ground. And let's talk a little bit about what's happening on the ground in the form of community trauma. Black New Yorkers had the highest rate of increase in overdose deaths, and that happened in East and Central Harlem as numbers 4 and 5 of the neighborhoods with the highest rates. Black New Yorkers are dying at the highest rates of increase of overdose deaths, and East and Central Harlem are communities 4 and 5 out of all of the neighborhoods in all 5 boroughs of New York City. So they're immersed in that data, but we are immersed in the reality of what's happening on the ground. Where is their commitment to reducing those and other harms associated with structural racism? Where is their commitment to addressing our community trauma in the form of housing insecurity, mass incarceration, high rates of unemployment, substandard education, and death? We need to hold them accountable for the attack on our community, the infliction of community trauma in which we live and work every day. We are raising our children in this environment every day. So I'm proposing a 2-point plan. One is putting ownership on the electeds that we have put in place. We need to convene them to address these political determinants of health. And the other, I'm going to put on us. So, you may be asking, what are political determinants of health? And so let's talk about that. Mass incarceration. We are still living in a community where there are thousands of Black men, women, and children who are under judicial review and or justice involved. Affordable housing. It has been replaced by high-rises, condos, co-ops. High-rises and higher rents over affordable housing. 50,000 people are about to be evicted from their homes due to the pandemic. But where is the commitment to reversing that? Our schools are underfunded. We are looking at districts 5 and 6 with some of the lowest rates of academic achievement in the city. We are pushing through children who are not ready, comparable, and or able to pass through in reading, writing, and arithmetic. Why is this? Concentrated in this community. And we're supposed to stand back and accept it. Our hospitals have beautiful glass atriums, but not enough healthcare workers or PPE to help us when we need it most. We're looking at NYCHA developments, which used to be a refuge for low-income families, families like mine, that have been abandoned by government, defunded by government, and we are looking at private developers taking over individual units and developments themselves. We have peeling paint, we have poor plumbing, we got rodents, heatless, and living without community centers with childcare and or advocacy. Why is that? Where is the commitment to the people? That is community trauma. And it's disproportionately impacting us at higher rates and incidence than anyone else in this city. We are impacted by chronic disease, diabetes, hypertension, depression, anxiety. We are living in community trauma, which has contributed to an increase in adverse childhood experiences. Child maltreatment, adolescent suicidal ideation, intimate partner violence, public consumption of drugs, street homelessness. We are walking through communities with public displays of mental illness. It's concentrated here in Harlem. That is community level trauma. So this concentrated assault on Harlem residents is called structural racism. It's contributing to our collective trauma every day. I want to pull that lens back. It's not about me and my diagnosis that I have been given of depression. I'm talking about a community level trauma that is contributing to our condition. And so what can we do, right? Because I don't want to just talk about the blight and the plight. What can we do? We put elected officials in office for a reason. And we need to not just go and vote for them and put them in office. We need to also hold them accountable for the role that they have as being our voices in Albany and in DC. So you can call them, you can write them, you can go to their offices, you can demand that they use their political capital to advocate in Albany and in DC for improved and equitable health and wealth outcomes for us. So the answers are really rooted in the essence of the problem. They need to develop financial channels for the attainment of fair and equitable education, housing, employment, nutritious food, childcare, healthcare, community resources, and social supports. We deserve that, people. We deserve that. But guess what? We too have a part to play in this. We cannot just put the ownership and onus on our electeds. We too have a part to play, and here it is. We, Black people, need to move beyond complacency and develop a movement toward equity. We need to do this on the ground. We need to do this in the media. We need to do this with our neighbors, and we need to do this at the legislative level. So I am proposing that we, Black people, openly and intentionally counter those narratives about Black people. That we are hungry, we're poor, we're addicted, we're unemployed, we're homeless, we're housing insecure, justice involved, dropouts and deadbeats because we're lazy and we're the main contributors to our own condition. No. It's a lie. Those are lies that are being told about us. We need to continue to expose the fact that we are under a systematic attack, and by doing so, we will publicly address that structural racism is working exactly as it is intended to work. It was designed this way. It was designed to inflict financial, give me a second, judicial, physical, human, cultural, and social trauma on Black people in our Black community. So, I am proposing that we demand the elected officials in this community. It's a community that is connected by bridges on 125th, 135th, 145th, 155th Streets. Build a stronger, bigger, more expansive bridge to better connect us with branches of government who can equitably fund our needs as we determine them to be, not as government determines we should have them. We are the ones that get to determine what we need. I'm proposing that we, Harlemites, put our elected officials to work for us by demanding that they advocate for more affordable housing and fewer luxury developments in Harlem. If they can place a moratorium on medication-assisted treatment programs, they can place a moratorium on additional luxury condos and developments and develop more affordable housing in this community. So the question is, how many of you have asked, where have our neighbors gone that had to disappear from this community because they could no longer afford to live here? I've asked. Affordable housing is a right. It is not a luxury like the developments that are going up. This that I am speaking of is community trauma. Structural racism in the form of community trauma prevents us from the attainment of our human rights. Community trauma contributes to our stigmatization, our stagnation, and our generational trauma. I know that I'm not alone when I am speaking up here. Each of you has been impacted in some way by community trauma. I know that there are others out here with the desire to create a movement toward equity. I know that there are others out here who are willing to go to our electeds and support them in the creation of legislation to change the political determinants of health, which are negatively impacting us. So, when galvanizing, we must think about each other too. Because I know I'm in the house of a place of action, right? It's called the National Action Network. Okay, just want to make sure I knew where I was. So let's talk about how we can take action. There are things that each of us can do to help heal this community trauma. The dictionary said that community is a group of people living together in one place, especially one practicing common ownership. And you may be asking, well, what type of ownership do we have, especially today with the new Harlem? But I'm going to tell you how we can move toward the movement. Our ownership is far beyond the property that we live in. It's more about the mindset toward our community and about each other. Our house, Our house is where we are, especially when we're in this community. Our house is our thinking about our brothers and our sisters, our commitment to help the men and women, and about our mutual respect for those that we live and work with every day. So please, I want you to just stop and take action and take a second and to think about the condition of your house. Does your space up here and in here need to be renovated? Do you need to reconstruct your foundational thinking about who you are in conjunction to the rest of this community? How has community trauma impacted you and others around you? How often do you clean your house? Do you take inventory of your thoughts and your actions toward your man, woman, and child next to you in this community? I'm asking you to join me in the construction site to build bridges which will connect us in our house, in our hearts, in our spirits. I'm asking you to help build bridges between generations and to pass the blueprints on to our young people that we talked about today, our teens, our youth, and our young adults. I'm asking you to see them as the next step of contractors in our community. One is the willingness to be able to hear what he is asking of me. The willingness to hear what he is asking of me, because see, I can get in my own way. The second thing I ask is that I have the willingness to do what he is asking me to do the first time he asks me, because I can get in my own way. Usually it's around the third time he asks me and he's screaming in my ear that I'm like, all right, God, I heard you, here I come. So I'm asking for two things: the ability to hear and the willingness to take action the first time. And every day he speaks back. Every day he asks me to do something. He says, I want you to reach out your hand and grab somebody else's in Harlem. And that's what I do. I got people in here who can attest to that. I walk hand in hand with them every day. I convene on your behalf as well. Doctors and clergy and politicians and community partners and NYPD and friends to build the bridges and fill those gaps in services and to assist where I cannot do the work. So I am proposing that we create a movement, a second Harlem Renaissance that rejuvenates the dignity of Harlem's original inhabitants, because it is this community that we live and work and play, that we seek to leave a legacy far beyond the brownstones and the jazz notes in our second Harlem Renaissance. So what can you do? What part do you want to play? What legacy do you want to leave in this community? That's questions for you to ask yourselves right now. Can you look at other Harlemites and smile? Can you ask them the question that I ask others every day, and that is, how can I be of service to you today? Can you hold the door open just for another second for somebody to get through? And can you compliment somebody without asking or seeking or expecting one in return? So I'm going to tell you what I will continue to do, because I'm your servant. I will continue to coalesce our electeds. I will continue to create programming. I will continue to cultivate relationships with those that have the purse strings in Albany and in DC. I will convene, I will rally with you, I will educate, I will advocate, I will activate, I will delegate, and I will relegate on your behalf, because I am your servant. I will demand equity in funding, equity in research, and equity in financial, employment, housing, and social opportunities for my people. I will speak truth to power when discussing the impact of political determinants of health on Black people. I will fight for my Black people to live, to work, to play in a community that is clean, accessible, and affordable for all, not just for the new Harlemites. Harlem, my Nan family, I am yours. I am here. I'm a loud voice at the tables where you are not. So in this Q&A, I need you to tell me what you want me to say at tables that I am sitting and you are not. What changes do you want to see? How can I best serve you? I pray that we commemorate this day with the cultivation of our two-point plan. One, to dismantle the political determinants of health, which have negatively impacted Harlem residents in the form of structural racism. And two, to move beyond complacency and to develop a movement toward equity. See, this is the foundation toward a comprehensive plan to bring racial, health, and wealth equity to Harlem and to heal community trauma. And so I'm going to ask you to say what I've heard you say so many times before. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Thank you. Wow, that's a loaded question. So I talked a little bit about some of the specific trauma that we are dealing with on the individual level. That trauma includes depression, anxiety, adverse childhood experiences. That includes intimate partner violence. So those are all traumatic events. But I also want to talk about the community level trauma, right? I want to talk about the public use, the addiction, the mental health issues that we are walking through every day. That is community level trauma. And so the question is what can we do about it? In addition to, coalescing our electeds, there are things that we can do individually. And so one of the things that I have created here in Harlem is a health and wellness center specifically for my people in Harlem. And so there are opportunities, and you heard Chaplain Jones talk about addressing some individual trauma through Reiki, through meditation, through acupuncture, through Reiki. All of those things that I mentioned are completely free to you, Harlem community. I don't ask for insurance. I don't ask for any monetary forms of exchange. All I ask is that you show up for yourselves if you're looking to address your own individual and personal trauma. On the other side, in terms of political determinants of health, we have to go to the politicians in order to do that. We put them in office. How many times have you just checked the mark because you recognized the name and never went back and asked what they were doing? You better keep your eye on the ball. This community didn't become the new Harlem all by itself. You have to keep your eye on the ball. Don't turn your back. Show up, call, see something, say something.
I hear that. Well, moving forward, I'm voicing it. Progressive 24-hour drop-in services are needed for youth and adults to provide resources, safeties, and communal stability. How can this be achieved, and how do you identify this purpose is supported by qualitative research data?
Ah, right in my wheelhouse. Who gave me that one? I just want to talk about some financial levies that were placed on this community relative to a 24-hour center to address the mental health needs of the women, men, and children in this community. And so I'm also a grant writer, right? And so everything that I do, I have Harlem in mind as I write these grants. And so I just submitted a grant to the Office of Mental Health. And it was to open a 24-hour intensive crisis stabilization center here in Harlem. It was beautifully designed in my head. It had leather lounge chairs that would massage you just to kind of give you a little moment of respite. It was very spa-like, but it also had psychiatrists and nurse practitioners, those that were child-informed in psychological, emotional trauma. We do know that the rates of suicidal ideation among our Black children is increasing. We see the public use, the public mental health that is happening here in Harlem, and so I wrote this grant. And then I got a call saying, we're really sorry we were unable to fund you last week. I'm not talking last year, I'm talking last week. And so I asked why, and I said, I need a debrief. And they began to go through these responses that were not even written in my grant, one of which saying I didn't have a fully formed cultural competency plan. Well, tell me how a Black woman from Harlem cannot be culturally responsive in responding to my Black people. And so, we didn't get that money yet. And so I need you, if you feel like you need a 24-hour intensive crisis stabilization center, you need to stand up and speak up and go and tell the Office of Mental Health of the state of New York so. Because I can't do this fight by myself. So now it's my job to stand here and respond line by line about some stuff that was not even in there. And so I began to ask questions. I said, well, did you fund anybody in Harlem? And the response was no. I said, okay. Because remember, we're communities 4 and 5 of the top 5 neighborhoods of all neighborhoods in New York City with the highest rates of incidence, right? I didn't make that up. The city told us so. And so my second question was, well, did you fund anybody in Manhattan? And the answer was no. And I said, well, let me tell you what we're dealing with on the ground. While you're looking at this high-level data, let me tell you what this looks like on the ground. I'm watching people OD and die in front of my door. And I said, and we're seeing and engaging with men that are coming over from Ward's Island, who are impacted with mental health issues, who are impacted with substance use disorders, who are disengaged in services, and so I want to serve them. And you know what they said to me? Oh yeah, we've read about that in the New York Times. So if you don't like it, if you want more, don't sit there and wait for me to go and get it for you. Come and stand by my side and demand it for yourselves and for your community. So I am doing my part, but this is a hard fight. And they have the money. New York State just got $286 million from an opioid settlement fund. And so the question is, how much are you getting? Are you getting your fair share? I'm doing my part, but I need you to stand with me. And so come to the pillars, sign a petition, tell them that we've had enough. We're not going to keep standing for them, overlooking us, unintentionally marginalizing us, unintentionally oppressing us when the data is there. They are saying, we know that this is structural racism. We know it's impacting Black people, and we're sorry. We've read about that. Enough reading about that.
I'm curious to know which grant fund was the application you submitted.
It was a grant that was a co-sponsored grant through OASIS and the Office of Mental Health to open an intensive crisis stabilization center 24 hours a day in Harlem.
Thank you for your response.
Do you know that a task force has been developed and assigned specifically to police Harlem? There are two of them. One is going to be down on 42nd Street in Times Square, the other one in Harlem. That's what they're not telling you. So they're putting money to police us, but they're not putting money to help and heal the community trauma that they have inflicted upon us. And so we can do nothing and wait for it to happen, or we can advocate.
I've been to Pillars more than one time. It's a very lovely looking place, and the environment is very, very serene and very helpful. My question is, how many signatures do you need in the petition? And once the petition is fulfilled, what do you do next?
Ooh, I love that, thank you. And so I'll take as many as I can get. What I do know is that there are 60,000 people that are in 10027 alone, right? And so how many, that is a question I will push back to the people. How many do you think you can get? I will do what I need to do with them. I already have a plan to go back to the Office of Mental Health and call what I see as structural racism and a contribution to community level trauma. So once I get them, I will package them. I will package them with the response that I am already about to give, and we will get this done. But I can't do it by myself. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you today.